What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MCU Reviewed. Week 2. Today, it's all about the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, more physical copies.
Right?
So
Yeah.
I have to. Oh wait, actually, no, we're in the same boat this time.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we got the same
yes.
one. Awesome. Love it. As always, I'm your host, Josiah Leroy. With me today, the boogeyman, Baba Yaga, John Fick. Howdy. Rashawn, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm great, man. What's up? We got some Incredible Hulk today. I got my green headpiece on today to help symbolize that a little bit. So let's do it.
I love it. Also joining us, a very, very special guest, longtime friend of the Geekiverse. You know him from 26 Shirts, Bill's Mafia, and of course, the presenter of this episode, this entire series, Fanteestic, Del Reid. Del, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to get into this.
We are thrilled to have you. As I mentioned there, the episode is presented by Fanteestic. They do some incredible stuff in Western New York in particular. Normally, I do a little bit of an ad read here, but Del, why don't you give the plug as the guy from Fanteestic?
The source is here.
Oh, wow. I didn't even... Okay, let's do it. So, Fanteestic... Well, I'll talk about 26 Shirts real quick. 26 Shirts, we sell a different... Buffalo-themed T-shirt every 2 weeks. We also have a Chicago line as well. Every shirt we sell gives back to the community in some way. Normally, it's a family in need. Sometimes it's a charitable cause. But we also have a geek-themed line as well called Fanteestic, and we don't do those on a regular basis anymore. But when we have a cool idea, we'll throw it out there, and that'll also help certain causes, that could use help.
So you guys, in really just a few years in doing this as a whole, have raised over $750,000. Is that correct? That goes right to these families and charities.
Yeah, since 2013, November 2013 is when it actually began. 26 Shirts, and then all the little divisions that have come off of it since then. We just a couple weeks ago passed $750,000 that we've donated back out.
So cool.
That's incredible, man. Thank you for doing all that you do and your crew there. You guys have made a difference in a lot of people's lives since 2013, and I'm sure before that.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of credit for other people's generosity. We can put all the different shirts out there on the internet that we want. If people don't buy them, they don't believe in what we're doing, it doesn't really work. But it's awesome to be able to do this.
Well, you're a good guy. You've got a good heart, and we appreciate not just that, but of course having you here. Now, we're talking Marvel. Del is a huge MCU guy. Del's along, so Del and I have gone along over the years, kind of got to know each other for being both obsessed with Star Wars. Now, as Del has told me many times, the MCU has kind of become his new Star Wars. So it only makes sense that he is on the podcast here to talk about all this today. So that being said, we've got The Incredible Hulk came out just a few months after Iron Man. If you haven't watched our first episode of Reviewed, go back and check that out at youtube.com/the Geekiverse, as well as any major podcast streaming station. Let's talk about kind of first impressions on the film here, just general feeling of it. Give us kind of your snapshot of it. I am going to start with John. John, give us your take on Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, man. So this is barely an MCU movie, and it shows. You can tell. So right off the bat, they start the film with this awful montage, giving you the entire backstory of the character. And I'm just like, so this is only my second time seeing this film. So I watched it for the first time last year. Just I had very little interest in this movie. So just watching it again, I'm like, man, they really don't start off on a good foot here. This really, really quick cut, horribly, very early 2000s montage to get you into it. And then things get a little bit better. I will say I enjoyed it more the second time than I did the first time. Maybe because I kind of, that dread was gone a little bit, because I'd heard a lot of less than amazing things about the film, so I wasn't really excited to watch it. Having already seen it, the second watch, it was fun. For what it is, I enjoyed it. Doesn't leave too much of an imprint on the MCU. Del and I were talking before we went live here. You could blip this movie out of existence and it wouldn't really affect the MCU at all. Sure, there are cool little Easter eggs and things and little references, but they don't really affect anything else. Biggest takeaway is that I definitely like Mark Ruffalo over Edward Norton as the Hulk. Not really a knock to what Edward Norton did in this film. He was fine. I really like Mark Ruffalo, so I'm glad we went the direction we went. Movie was okay. We'll get more into some specifics and stuff like that. Didn't blow me away. 2 watches through. next time we do this and next year or whatever I do my next watch through, I'm still going to kind of dread this one.
Rashawn, let's hear your take on Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, so I even though I disagree with John's overall point, I do agree with some of the minor things that he did say. I enjoy the movie. Is it top? Well, I guess we're gonna get to that. But is it a top 5, 10 MCU movie for me? No. A lot of movies have surpassed it, obviously, since its release. But for me, it's always been a movie where coming off of the first Iron Man, for me it is a step down from that. But it's enjoyable for me. I do like with this movie how they did try to really go traditional Hulk, especially compared to what we got as we move through the MCU. Edward Norton's portrayal for me, I enjoy it. Do I enjoy Mark Ruffalo, moving forward? I do. I think Mark Ruffalo definitely has a specific take that fits for what the MCU has grown into. But I could definitely see why this, they were trying to go for a more classic Incredible Hulk with this, Edward Norton playing a Bruce Banner that's definitely more awkward and a little bit more reserved just due to the situation that he's in, and seeing that side of him and just things of that nature that we're going to get into. Again, so it's enjoyable. And like John said, they throw some little Easter eggs in here. But the one thing I do agree with, even though I do enjoy the movie, is that it is a blip. If we skip this, or if you skip this in your MCU watch, you wouldn't really. The only thing I guess you're missing is Thunderbolt Ross, who shows up later on. But again, the way that that's brought in later, it's not like you need to have watched this movie. So it definitely is a movie where even though I enjoy it, I do acknowledge that if it just faded away, like you probably wouldn't really notice.
Del, give us your take on Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, growing up, Hulk was always one of my favorite characters. Before I got married and sold off all my comics and everything, I had a large Hulk collection. I just always, I thought he was cool. And I was really excited when they put this movie out because I remember being so excited in 2003 when Ang Lee's Hulk movie came out, and that was, excuse the pun, like an abomination. that was such a terrible movie. Such a I really love what the MCU has done with the Hulk character since 2008. But this snapshot in time, this was the best Hulk that had ever been shown on any screen, in my opinion. So now, obviously, as a rewatch, we've seen the way that Marvel has taken the character and just completely reworked it from Ed Norton's take. But overall, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie when it came out. I enjoyed it when I rewatch I did a few years ago, and I enjoyed it getting prepared for this podcast. But it's hard to watch it and not regard what the direction that the character is going to go.
Sure. Quick jump off. You mentioned the 2003 Hulk, the Ang Lee Hulk. That may have been why I had no real motivation to see this when it first came out. Obviously, in 2008, we had no idea what they were going for with the MCU, so I wasn't missing an MCU movie. I was just missing another Hulk movie, which I had been so burned on, 5 years prior with that Ang Lee. I remember seeing that movie in the drive-in and just being like, "Can we go home? This is just so boring." I mean, I was pretty young, but it was it wasn't great.
You didn't like the Hulk dogs?
Sure didn't.
Hulk dogs.
Never seen that movie.
Dude, you're not missing anything.
You're good.
Yeah,
You're good.
I never will. I guess never say never, but I don't plan to. So, John, maybe before we get to box office numbers in a moment, if you've got those pulled up,
I do.
Just my quick take on everything is I've enjoyed the movie for what it is throughout the years, throughout the numerous rewatches. As I mentioned pre-show, I rewatched the entire MCU before every MCU movie. And we're kind of doing that right now, almost before Black Widow. It comes out a month after we'll end this series. So it wasn't obviously the direction that Marvel originally wanted to take it in. There was a falling out between them and Ed Norton. They said kind of thing. Marvel and they basically said they let him go, and Ed said he left, but it sounded like Ed was more along the lines of from what I've read in interviews and heard in quotes and all that he wanted to take this more in the direction of what we saw in the Nolan trilogy, for example, with Batman, where it was a more serious tone, a darker tone, and you can definitely see that in this movie. his take on the Hulk I enjoyed. Again, night and day, really, from Mark Ruffalo. And another reason it sounds like the Kevin Feige and Marvel wanted to move on was that he probably wouldn't have played as well in the group of Avengers that we see, right? Mark Ruffalo is just a perfect puzzle piece when we see that original Avengers movie and all of them get together. Not sure we would have had that same chemistry here with Ed Norton. But this movie here, it was kind of an eye-opening for me last night when I watched it for the first time, and it was, I should watch this as a standalone movie. And it sucks that you almost kind of got to lower your expectations for anything that you're doing. But when it comes to this, if I look at it as really a standalone thing, it's outside the MCU, even though it's not, it kind of changed the perspective a little bit for me. Granted, as you guys said, we could just forget about it and never watch it again, and it would affect nothing. But I always go through each movie. I don't skip this. I don't skip Dark World. There's a few in there that we've kind of joked about. But again, in short, I like it for what it was. John, do you want to go over just what kind of the box office run looks like?
I do. I just want to apologize for dropping the ball and not making my light behind me green from the get-go. It's always blue because I like blue, but I just realized it should be green, so it's green now. Box office, like 264 million. So successful. Not really doing too much. Made a splash. Certainly made its money back. It wasn't really. I think the taste in the mouth from the Ang Lee Hulk kind of took some people, took some butts out of seats is what I'm trying to say there. Not too much, but obviously nowhere near what we get from MCU movies nowadays. 264 million was probably the budget for Avengers 1.
Yeah, that's a fraction of what we've seen, especially as it's almost become commonplace that these movies either come close to or eclipse $1 billion.
Yeah.
Granted, we're 10 years later down the line and we've had some nice universe building, inflation, etc. But that is a small haul for a box office hit, or not a hit, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Do we want to watch the trailer? Cue that up.
Yeah. So we can get that trailer going. I will get that playing here in just a second.
So we're gonna
go ahead.
Basically, as we did last episode, we're gonna watch the trailer through. I always found this kind of fun, whether it's Star Wars movies, Lord of the Rings, whatever sagas over the years. I always love going back and seeing those trailers because sometimes things change. But one thing that never changes is I always am able to, in some way, shape, or form, remember how I felt when I saw it and like the expectations I had going into a movie. And I think that's always that's kind of exciting. So that's one reason we're kind of doing that as we go along here.
I've got a problem. There are aspects of my personality that I can't control.
See a shrink?
It's a little bit more complicated than that.
Bruce, trust me when I tell you I've heard them all.
Not this one.
We've never seen anything even close to your levels of exposure. That you survived an event like that, it's beyond my comprehension.
I don't want to control it. I want to get rid of it.
As far as I'm concerned, that man's whole body is property of the U.S. Army.
They want it as a weapon. If we let it go, we will never get it back.
What the hell was that?
There's only one thing that can fight that. It's in me.
Maybe if I can control it, I can use it.
There it is, trailer. Now, first reaction, especially after last week watching the Iron Man trailer, right after watching the movie as well, we've come a long way in trailers in terms of not just cutting the movie beat for beat, which I feel like both of those trailers did. Having just watched the movie yesterday and watching this trailer now, like, it is chronologically the movie. Obviously, you're not going to be able to piece it together exactly, but if you've just seen the movie, it's kind of crazy how beat for beat the trailer is. Same with Iron Man.
Yeah, they're definitely different nowadays in style and in what they're almost trying to, in the way they try to accomplish getting that enticement.
Yeah, I think we're
also we.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, nowadays they don't really care to like entice you with the story at all. They kind of just want to give you an idea or like give you some world building, some cool moments, stuff like that. They kind of just want to stay away from the story completely, and it seems completely opposite with the way these early trailers were.
Because they're not trying to entice you to go see the movie. They're like, yeah, it's another MCU movie. You're gonna go see it.
True.
Here's some shots from it.
Very true.
At this point, yeah.
They could literally give me like 5 still shots, and I'd be like, awesome! Can't wait.
Just give me a
I'll
title.
be there day one.
We have like what 5 titles of movies that we've never seen a snippet from, or we're all in already. I'm good to go.
I know. Like I'm like, yeah, I can't wait for Eternals. I know nothing about Eternals. Nothing. So we were wrong. We said early. What's that, Rashawn?
I'm just saying that's the clout that the MCU has now. It's just like, oh, they're taking this D-level superhero team. Oh, all right, I'll watch it now.
They built up that cachet.
Yes.
So we said originally it was 2 months after Iron Man. It was 1 month after Iron Man, as we saw there, June 2008, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I should say this, as I mentioned last episode, there are 3 MCU movies I had not seen in movie theaters, and this was one of them. So I never got there.
This might be my only one, to be honest.
Really?
Oh, no. I didn't see Ant-Man and the Wasp in theaters either. Those are the only 2.
Gotcha.
I think.
Rashawn, would you have seen this?
This was the last one I didn't see in theaters, just because they were so close to each other. Again, I don't know what was going on in my childhood at that time, but these were the Iron Man 1 and Hulk were the only 2 movies I didn't see in theaters. Every single one after that was in theaters.
Gotcha. And Del, you saw these, of course, right? Because you said you had the monitor set up.
Yeah, I was so excited and I enjoyed it. It was good. I enjoyed it, like I said, more back then than I do now rewatching it, just knowing the context. But yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, it's funny kind of looking back. It's not super hypeful, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's because I know what the outcome of the movie is, but maybe that's also a testament to what John said, where it's a little bit bland in how it tries to portray. They don't even try to go out of sync with any of it.
Yeah, trailers are kind of an art form. Somebody mentioned Zack Snyder earlier in this podcast, or maybe it was off air, forgot. But Zack Snyder is like a a trailer master, and his movies never seem to live up to the trailer. But there's an art to trailer making, and maybe we didn't learn about that until the late 2000s.
And now Marvel puts like red herrings in the trailer, stuff that's not even going to. I mean, I think there was a cut scene. I don't remember that in the movie with him talking to Ty Burrell. I don't remember that in the movie. That was just like
I was about to say that wasn't the first trailer scene. Didn't even make it into the final cut.
But that was probably just like a deleted scene. Now, I mean, you see Hulk running around Wakanda leading up to Infinity War, and then it turns out he's not even in the movie.
Yeah, and they sold toys too. They sold like Funko Pops of Hulk busting out of the Hulk Buster. That didn't even happen.
It's amazing how that's changed too. Like I remember the biggest thing for me was Rogue One. And like a lot changed in that trailer. And I was very disappointed in the things that they took out for where I thought they were going to go. But that is very commonplace now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing, like how much changes even in just the weeks and months leading up to a movie.
Yeah, I think nerdom, pop culture, and definitely the internet has really helped like make trailers an art form. I mean, the video game world, the comic book world, like how much hype goes into a new trailer drop. It's not like it was in 2008 for sure.
It's an event now. It's not like, oh, I'm going to a movie and I happen to just see this trailer. It's like with us on the gaming side, where like it was a countdown almost till Last of Us Part 2 trailers dropping. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think about like how movies and companies try to avoid spoilers, even to the point of like Del mentioning the Hulkbuster. Like that didn't happen. They changed that so that we would be fresh when we saw the movie. I think back to like Revenge of the Sith. The Revenge of the Sith video game came out weeks before the movie did, with footage from the movie, including a true to story ending. Like, Can you imagine if that happened now? It would never happen now.
Crazy.
Like they don't even let the Star Wars books come out nowadays until after the movies are out, just for fear of spoilers. It's so different just 10, 15 years later.
It's the money, man.
I think I said this on a previous podcast. I don't think it was Iron Man. It was something else that we did. But basically, the fundamental thing in movie making is like when your trailer has one job. It's to take customer or viewer's excitement level from here and hopefully raise it up to, one or two notches. So if the trailer did that, great. If it didn't do that, the trailer failed. Doesn't matter if the movie lives up or down to what the trailer was. That trailer, in each trailer after that, needs to build upon that excitement. So I guess anytime we watch these trailers, you have to just do a time travel and just be like, man, would I have been excited for that in 2008? And it's tough because we know where the MCU has gone and where these films have gone. But I feel like with this one, I agree with you guys. I don't think the hype factor was necessarily there with this one. I just think it was like, oh, a Hulk movie's now is coming out now too. It's so close after Iron Man. Yep. And actually, the trailers were released around the same time too. So,
yeah, I don't even remember there being any hype for this movie, really. At least for me personally, I remember it snuck up on me. I was like, oh, there's a Hulk movie? I mean, I knew Iron Man was coming. I saw that trailer like 15 times before the movie came out. But then I was like, oh, now there's a Hulk movie too? And that was... I don't know if that was just because I didn't find the right circles or whatever back then on the internet, but like it snuck up on me.
This movie's entire existence since it's been released has been low key. From, again, as you just talked about, Del, with the trailers, to moving again full circle. Or when you, even in phase one, if you transport yourself back in time, then at phase one, you watch all the Marvel movies, and then for the average viewer, they're like, wait, that's not the same Hulk that was in the last Hulk movie that I just watched. And again, fast forward 2020, when most people are doing MCU rewatches, this is the commonly most skipped movie because people just don't know about it.
Yeah.
So this entire existence from inception to wherever it's at now has always been, unless you're a diehard comic book fan like myself, and it seems like Dell is in a way, like you wouldn't, and all of us technically, but you wouldn't know unless you just knew to look for the movie.
Yeah, I don't know this for a fact, but I would be willing to bet if you were to just type into Google, is the Incredible Hulk, I bet you the first autofill would be an MCU movie,
or canon, or yep.
Yeah, when I mentioned that, I saw Avengers, and that was in 2012, kind of my eye-opening moment to dive into this universe. I went to Best Buy, bought all of these Blu-rays. I definitely had to figure out if this was a part of it, because I wasn't going to buy a movie that wasn't a part of this universe.
Yeah.
Even having not seen a few of them that I went and purchased, I was all about it, but I really needed to make sure that this was a part of it, and I probably one of those people who contributed to that search. So
now,
yeah.
Are you guys familiar with the Marvel one-shots?
I was just about to bring that up, though. I think I know where you're going, but go ahead.
They did a really good job of like retconning when Tony Stark comes in to talk to Ross and talks about building a team.
I was going there, yep.
And so, I mean, that's like the cement, I guess, in terms of the real MCU-ness. Obviously, Tony Stark's in the movie, so there's that. But like even more so, like they even went through the efforts of retconning it and mentioning Abomination several times. Like the whole point of that one shot was basically like, what happened to Abomination? And, how come Tony Stark was talking to Ross,
Yep.
But anyways, yeah, so they've done their work in terms of trying to like put their hooks into that movie. So they're at some level, or at some point, they at least were invested in that movie being a part of the MCU.
And the funny part with that one shot too, I guess I'll bring this up once we get to the Avengers episode, for any listeners that aren't going to be watching this and the Avengers one. That one shot I remember, and I believe you're talking about the one with Phil Coulson, right?
And Sitwell.
Yep. So it's so funny how in that one shot, again, I haven't seen it in years, but I remember this point very vividly, is that when they were trying to form the team, the reason why, or what they ended up writing out, was the reason why Tony Stark went to go see Ross, not for Banner. They wanted Abomination to be on a part of the Avengers initiative. And that whole one shot basically ended with Coulson and And he said, so, well, basically being like, no, he's like too unstable. We're not doing this. And I forget if they decided afterwards with that, if they were going to go with Banner or if they were just dropping having any Hulk type of character on the team. But that's like one of those little nuggets that, again, I don't even think, are the one shots even on Disney Plus? If they're not, I don't know.
I don't think so.
They're all on YouTube.
Because I don't think so.
You can find them all on YouTube for sure. Yeah.
I would recommend anyone listening try to go find those one shots because are they anything crazy? No, but they're the little fun little what are they? If you're reading a comic book, if each movie is a comic book, these are like the one shots are like the like little side strip in the newspapers that they used to have. That's what those are.
I wish they kept doing those. They're very cool.
Yeah.
So, how many times you guys think you've seen this movie? If you had to give it a ballpark,
2 for
John,
sure.
that's an easy one.
Yeah,
John knows.
Saw it for the first time last year and watched it again. That's it. 2 dose.
Rashawn, what do you think?
For me, I think I said with Iron Man, I was around 8 to 10. It would have to be around the same because again, I used to go back and watch them very frequently. It had to be. Listen, here's one thing I'll say before Del goes. This was when I first saw the Hulk. I remember I was not impressed by it when I first saw it. I saw it. It was either around viewing 2 or 3 when I started to come around to this movie. I want to say maybe it was 3 because maybe the second time again I was kind of like, oh, all right, I gotta watch it to watch it. But it was around viewing 3 when this one it grew on me with each video. Like I remember viewing 3 through about 5 or 6. It grew on me each time. And then around viewing 7-ish is when I'm settled into where I'm at now.
My friend, if you have to watch a movie 7 times to even accept the fact that it's good, it's not good. Sorry.
Again, keep in mind that this is over a period of years.
That's like me saying Major League is the best movie of all time because I went to sleep to that movie for like 5 years because it was the only DVD I had.
I do know somebody that saw Phantom Menace 8 times in theaters, by the way.
Is it you?
No.
Okay.
No, I saw it once in theaters.
I actually do too. I think this person is 12, actually.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's a topic for a different time. Del, how many times do you think you've seen this movie?
I think 5 at the most. You know, I like I said, I enjoyed it when it first came out, but I didn't follow it up in terms of like going and buying the DVD when it came out or anything like that. And just I've seen it through different rewatches here and there.
Gotcha. I'm probably same boat. Like I said, I've been rewatching the MCU for a long time now, just before every Marvel movie. So I've got to be at least at 10 times. I have to be because I've watched them all from the beginning as they've been coming out through the years.
So you're telling me you rewatched the entire MCU before both Endgame and Spider-Man: Homecoming? You watched 40 movies in 2 months?
No, I didn't do it for those 2. Those are a little close.
Okay.
So maybe it's a little bit less than that.
I was just kind of
for
messing with you.
Vast majority I have.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So before we get on to the next bullet point, I took notes throughout the movie. Also, if you're looking for more content on what we're talking about, a few years ago in the lead up to Infinity War, I did a series called Some Assembly Required. Basically, all it was written articles, and it kind of chronicled what the movie was specifically and where I thought it was going into the Infinity War storyline. Also, comic book style listed notable appearances, which I thought is kind of a fun checklist. Obviously, the first and only appearance for Ed Norton. Same for Liv Tyler as Betty Ross. By the way, what do you guys think of her as a secondary character? Starting with John.
Probably stood out the most to me. I think my biggest takeaway, because one of our bullet points we have on here is to talk about like favorite non-titular characters, so not non-main characters. She was the only standout for me. I feel like everybody else in this movie was extremely one-dimensional. Like literally every other character who had more than 1 minute of screen time was just straight one note the entire time. She kind of was the diversion from that. She was good. I don't love her as an actress. I don't know what it is, but she did the character was fine. Nothing.
She felt I didn't love her performance in this, and I'm kind of in the same boat with you, John. One notable funny thing to me is the cab ride when she's the one who's having the anger issues and he's got to calm her down.
Yeah.
That is like totally classic MCU, even though this movie doesn't feel MCU. I think like that's just a common thread there where those moments are wonderful.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that real quick? John, you mentioned your favorite non-Hulk character. Rashawn, who's your favorite character? You'd have to say that isn't Bruce Banner.
I would have to go with Betty Ross for me. The thing for me, maybe this is the romantic in me talking, but the thing that I love about their dynamic is, and why I'll say it's a shame that we never got to see anything else from it. But when you think about where the story goes, again, there was really never a need for her. So she just works in this standalone. I just love the fact that when everything consistently throughout his life since he became the Hulk, when everything was falling apart around him, she was the one thing that kept him grounded. And again, that's the romantic in me talking. So I did like seeing that. And again, seeing how they end up coming back, like that scene when she like sees him and then she's like, wait a minute, did I see what I think I just saw? And seeing that, and then just seeing how she was going to stick by his side no matter what. Which was like a ride or die type of gal he's got for himself. But and seeing how the movie ends with basically just with, I'm going to talk about this a lot with anything movie related that we do, but acting without dialogue, just the look that Banner gives her as he's the Hulk. And then just that exchange is like, no matter what we do. And when the helicopter shines on Hulk and then he ends up running off into the night, no matter what they do, they'll never be able to be together. Thus, I think playing off of that, why she never shows up again, because it's just not going to work. Every other character, has ways they can make a relationship work. There is no possible way a long-term relationship could work, I think, with Bruce Banner. And you even see that in the motel scene when they tried, doing a few things and it wasn't, again, it wasn't going to work. So I liked her portrayal. Again, wasn't anything special. No, not by any means. But just seeing how the Hulk that they were going for, and again, how tragic it was going to be, how dark it was going to be, but she was the one light that he had. I love how they portrayed that in this movie.
Yeah, I'll say that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Their chemistry was good, regardless of what I think you felt of either the Norton or Tyler's performances. They worked together.
Just like Downey and Gwyneth Paltrow, for me it felt natural. Again, that relationship between those two characters and those two actors is better in my opinion, but just going back to how natural that relationship feels. Again, comic book movies before these movies had a classic trope of forcing the relationship down your throat. I didn't feel like it was forced. I felt like it was necessary. Or obviously, if a relationship feels necessary, then it works in real life or in a movie.
Good point. John, you were going to say?
I was going to say that I think it was a lot better written than it was executed and acted. That's about it.
Del, not that we've got a lot of options, but favorite secondary character?
It has to be Betty Ross because, as John mentioned, everybody else in that movie is just a one-dimensional character who's like serving a purpose for the plot. I mean, but she, there was a good dynamic, even when, the look on her face when she sees Bruce in the kitchen at the pizzeria, and so many, little moments, like you said, Rashawn, acting without dialogue. There's a lot of that in there. So I'd go with her. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, like it's been said, but not a lot of choices.
I'd agree with you guys there. Just to throw in another one, I do, and this has probably helped, years down the line with Captain America: Civil War. But I love that all those movies later we got General Ross. So that's a nice little other thread that kind of ties this movie in. There's not many of them, but it keeps it relevant in the MCU just to a fine degree. And so watching this movie as a standalone, don't care for General Ross so much, but when I watch Civil War and what we've seen even in cameos after that in Endgame or Infinity War, kind of interesting to see that he was there, in 2008, and then we got him again in 2016. I love stuff like that, especially in a shared universe movie, and that was kind of a nice thread for me. Let's see here. So obviously we got a brief cameo from Robert Downey Jr. there at the end. Other cameos that were really awesome. Loved Lou Ferrigno in there. What a wonderful little nod. Of course, the original Hulk, to see him in there was wonderful in the way that he was. It's a nice little scene with Edward Norton, even to the point where they shake hands. I think that's really awesome because it's like, hey, at that time, Ed, you're the new Hulk, and It was almost like he was
torch.
exactly.
Did Lou Ferrigno also voice the Hulk in this movie? Because that's what he's credited for in IMDb. Is the voice of the Hulk.
I believe he did.
Cool.
I've heard that. Yes.
Cool. That's awesome.
It was great. Lou was at Nickel City Con a few years ago, and our own Lou Matuzzo got to host his panel, which was super awesome. So basically, any panel that I wasn't hosting, I acted as kind of like the liaison. So I had to go to like the agent and then bring them down like through the elevators at the convention center. So I got to like ride an elevator with Lou Ferrigno, which was pretty freaking awesome.
That's cool.
It goes without saying, the dude truly is massive. Like he's next to you and I'm like, whoa, hey buddy. I would never say buddy, of course, but you know what I mean. Also, Stan Lee, of course, has his appearance. This is one of my more favorite Stan Lee appearances. I don't know. For some reason, I like the whimsical nature of this one.
Yeah,
they all are to a point.
Yeah,
a rather light moment in an ultimately dark movie. This is the only movie, Infinity War notwithstanding, that to that point we had. If you go throughout the MCU history, all the movies throughout the years, this one did not have a post-credit scene. Of course, it is kind of really a post-credit scene, but it just happens to take place before the credits. And in my opinion, it was that. We talked a little bit about that with the one shot that Del brought up.
Real quick,
yeah.
I can interrupt you because you were talking about cameos before.
Yep.
Stan Lee, not Stan Lee, but Stan Lee, the pizzeria owner, actually was the voice of the Hulk in the cartoon series in the 60s.
I didn't know that.
Bruce Banner, yeah. So I didn't. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I wanted.
No, you're good.
It's another little nod that I thought was really cool.
And I think
that is really cool.
That the pizzeria's name is Stanley's as a nod to Stan Lee as well.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I did notice that, and I was like, all right, so this one's. I knew he was somebody. I didn't know that that's what his credit was. So that's really nice, Del. That's a good fact. A few other just quick bullet points, notes as I went throughout the movie. Feel free to chime in wherever. I mentioned it's good as a standalone movie. We talked about Norton and why he left. We talked about General Ross. John, you mentioned early on how they executed on what you thought was a poor execution for the backstory.
Yeah.
I actually like what they did, and for a few reasons. It felt like this was a differentiating thing for Marvel. So we mentioned Iron Man is claiming, hey, I'm Iron Man in public, right? Like this was another thing. They weren't taking the time to go back and tell the Hulk origin again, because it's not as much as like, hey, we get Spider-Man origin every few years. It felt like. I don't think it was on that level, but it was their way of saying we're not going to waste your time with a Hulk origin to an extent. And I like that.
I love the idea of it, but I hate that execution. It felt very Justice League. I'm going to give you a synopsis of the villain in this 2-second like blurb, and you're going to have to understand it, and that's the only way I'm going to tell the story. It just, I don't know. It was just poorly executed exposition that I just didn't appreciate. It was frustrating to watch. I was like, you're really going to give me the backstory of this character in this like 30-second montage for the sake of not giving me a backstory. Just do it the right way and don't give me a backstory.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I mean, because it's a fugitive movie. It's not an origin story, you know?
Sure.
And I thought it was an interesting choice that they decided to forego the origin, though, because 5 years prior, there was that movie we talked about earlier, which completely changed the way the Hulk became the Hulk. Like it was just, they went in a completely different direction. So they basically the filmmakers basically said, okay, listen, we all know, what the real reason Bruce Banner became the Hulk. We're not going to get into, retelling the story for the sake of negating 2003's movie. But I don't know. I liked it. Maybe it was maybe it could have been done a little bit better, but I liked that they hit the ground running with he's a fugitive.
It hooks me every time. Like I forget that it happened every time I watch this movie or go to rewatch it. So I liked it again from that standpoint where it was like, hey, let's just move on to really what this story is about. And I also appreciated that later on with Spider-Man's entry as we got into Captain America: Civil War, and Spider-Man's finally allowed to cross over with the contractual obligations. I was so happy that they decided not to go the origin story route, because they could have done that instead of introducing him into Civil War if they wanted to. I think they by far took the better choice in what they did.
That's
but,
what I mean
you
when you can do it well. Like we didn't get a 30-second quick crossfade montage of Peter Parker turning into Spider-Man just because we didn't want an origin story, right? We just hit the ground running, and they told us that story through dialogue throughout the movie. I just felt opening my first taste of this movie is just a quick montage. It just kind of soured me. I just don't like in storytelling. I just don't like that.
That's totally fair. From my standpoint, I feel like it tells you a lot. Again, it is what it is. But I thought it was a good way to utilize the story. I think it's a funny, maybe about 20 minutes into the movie when he is he's trying to back off the guys at the factory from that one girl, and he says, "You won't like me when I'm hungry," because he can't figure out the word for angry.
Yeah,
I think that's another really nice MCU bit of humor there.
That's a good one.
That's a good one for sure.
One thing, one little side note that I did appreciate: everything in this movie was green. Like the drink at the factory he worked at was green. The concoction he was making with the flour, of course, it had to be green. Like everything was just green. I'm like, you know what? This is so absurd that I like it.
John, that's my next point on here. Is from a visual standpoint, the color palette is one of the best in all of the MCU from the standpoint that they were really consistent with that green tone.
Yeah.
Whether it's the things you mentioned, I don't recall where this was, but it was late at night. They could have been at the pizzeria for all I know. Outside, like there's a greenish hue from the street light, which obviously wouldn't normally happen, but it was just a nice other way to really keep up and say, like, this is the Hulk. Everything's green. Another nice kind of little nod is her bringing home clothes to I want to say the motel room and having the huge purple pants.
Yeah. I was about to say that too, because that goes into the point I brought up in the Iron Man review, is that even in this movie, even though this feels different than other MCU movies, they still put their stamp that, hey, this is our version of these characters. We're not going to take every little thing from the comics and adapt it, because half of the stuff would look absolutely ridiculous. And there's going to be more examples of that I'm going to touch on as we get to later MCU movies. But again, for this Hulk that they went for with all of these, just a more serious tone. Again, the color palette that you mentioned. Oh, and here comes this big green dude with, bright purple shorts. It would have looked insane. So I love that was one of those things that Feige probably from the start was like, all right, we're going to just do this. We're going to give him some generic pair of shorts or pants that you don't even remember the color of, just because it doesn't matter. But that purple thing, no, that's not happening. It'll look ridiculous. Yeah. It'll throw everything off.
It reminded me a lot of when Cyclops says to Wolverine in the first X-Men movie, when they were put on their suits, and he says, "Oh, what did you want? Blue and yellow spandex?"
Yeah.
I thought it was like a funny little nod.
Yeah, I love when properties acknowledge that, that they know it exists, they know other stories exist. I always think that self-awareness is a nice thing. A lot of the super soldier talk throughout the movie, with failed experiments and not being able to replicate it, really, really plants the seeds for what's coming in Captain America and. To a point, Winter Soldier as we get down the line there. So again, as you sit back and kind of let it stew, there's a lot of these little seeds that were planted that they were planning to have throughout the MCU, and they did execute on in some ways. The other thing that I kind of wanted to mention, and I don't want to take this point too far off on a tangent, but I always appreciate that this was the second movie in the MCU. It was another one-off, small character-focused film, not high stakes when we see in the Avengers or Infinity War or Endgame, obviously. Whereas, on the contrast, a big reason for why I believe the DCEU failed is its second movie was a team-up movie in Batman versus Superman.
1000% agree here.
Even this story's what I'm saying. This opinion has been done to death and told to death. But I don't think that it should be glossed over. That even though we got the Incredible Hulk, which is not it wasn't a big box office hit, as John went over the numbers. We're all sitting here going, yeah, it's a fun movie, but we could really never see it again and be totally fine. For all of that, it still served its part in a way in helping to establish the MCU, taking its time, making us fall in love with the characters, even though we did a lot of recasting here. And as I mentioned, taking its time and getting to where it had to go. Whereas DC was like, hey, we've got Batman and Superman. We're going to throw in Wonder Woman, and here's a villain you don't really give a crap about, and here's this. And you're just going to love it because of all these names. And they didn't realize that, and that's why they failed. So I thought that was a point worth kind of going over a little bit. So
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just the one thing I'll add to what you said is that in terms of my like research with filmmaking and stuff, I don't know like if this has an official name or whatnot, but the thing that Marvel nails is with all of these phase 1 movies, just looking at it at a bigger scale from Hulk, is that they focus on the personal stories first, the personal stories that generally end up to you saving the neighborhood, right? Then depending on the movie, they'll go a little bit bigger. Let's discount Avengers for a second. But with that, or even actually, no, Avengers fits in this because the next part of this puzzle is you save the neighborhood, then you save the city. Then after you save the city, maybe you save the country, or if you skip the country, you go save the world. Your stakes keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Maybe eventually you save the universe at some point. So you kind of see where I'm going with that, train of thought there. So even though this kind of veers off the Hulk a little bit, but to your point, it works for this because of that small contained story. One challenge that I can see the MCU presenting with is that they've saved the universe. They've saved all of time and reality in a way. Now you have to kind of build that back up again. So how do you do that? So that'll be an interesting challenge that they have. And to your point about why the DCU really, you can argue it failed, or you can argue it got off to a slow start. But yeah, like they went straight from saving neighborhood with Man of Steel straight to save the world. Like there's not enough personal storytelling in there. So even the movie, the thing that's brilliantly done with all of these phase 1 movies, and that Hulk still does well, I think, despite what you think of it, is that it still does keep that story contained. It's personal. It fleshes the character out so that you can then take it to a crossover movie. Thus, you care about every single character in the crossover. That is the secret to doing crossovers that Marvel perfected, that I don't know why a lot of these other companies don't try. They want to just go straight for the big ticket money movie. You have to start small and build with small stories first, and then lead to your big epic.
I think to that point, that's why what the MCU has done is so special, because you have one person, Kevin Feige, who's kind of like the puppet master through all this. And I've always got the impression that, Warner Brothers and, everybody who's putting together the DCEU is run by a board. And it seems like it's a lot of cooks in that kitchen when basically you have Kevin Feige, who probably has the coolest whiteboard ever in his office, where he outlines all the phases and how they're all going to play out and how they all tie to each other. I just think that he doesn't get enough as much credit as he gets in geekdom and people who follow like the construction of all this. He doesn't get enough credit just in terms of Hollywood in general and entertainment industry in general, just for what he has created or what he has allowed people, the framework that he has provided creators to create with it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they look at the Avengers, like Warner Brothers or whomever, they look at the Avengers like, oh, we can make one of those movies with a lot of superheroes in it, and they'll all, play off each other, and it'll be great. But they've not taken the time to actually, like you said, hone in on those character pieces.
Del, think about that. If we don't have this build up and this investment, think of it as a long-term investment in each of these characters, and in short, really all of Marvel, we don't care as much nearly about what happens in Infinity War. I'm sure it's still a great movie, but like we are emotionally invested in not just Iron Man, not just Captain America, but any one of these characters. And we saw Shazam together. That was a fun, solely focused movie. Wonder Woman, very good movie. Some of their it feels like the lessons they maybe learned a little too late, but they've done a good job in recent years with these individual movies. Can you imagine seeing a team up now with a Superman? Well, I love Henry Cavill as Superman, but any number of these characters and really seeing them team up for the first time, man, I would have loved it just as much as Avengers. And I I think it's unfortunate that we'll probably never get that. But
one last thing I want to touch on, and I don't want to turn this into a DCEU bash fest, because there were some little elements I think that they did well in their own right, even though a lot of it was at controversy. Basically, what they did. So if you picture the MCU, right? What the DCEU did is they made Man of Steel, they made Batman vs Superman, and then did that go straight to Justice League? I'm looking at my little collection up here.
Suicide Squad.
Or Suicide Squad. So they took away from the heroes. Then did it go to Wonder Woman and then Justice League?
Yep.
Okay. So basically, if you equate that to what if Marvel did that, it would be Iron Man would be your Man of Steel. You would go straight to Civil War. Then you would go tell some other story with the Sinister Six or something weird that wouldn't really make much sense in the grand scheme of things. Then you would go back and you would have Captain America, and then you would have the first Avengers. You see how it doesn't make sense? You see how the storylines and the type of scale of stories that you're going is kind of all over the place? That's why, to Dell's point, Kevin Feige from the get-go perfected a craft on how they were going to do this.
I'm excited to see what Kevin does with his Star Wars project. I think there's no reason not to think it's going to be amazing. Same with Taika Waititi.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Wrapping up things here on this episode of the MCU Reviewed, let's get to, if you've got one, is there one moment in the movie, maybe just a small moment, a favorite scene? I know we've mentioned some kind of funny moments. Is there any sort of spot that sticks out to you at all from this? John, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I really like the battle, like the first real Hulk battle at the university when he's like going to catch a bus with Betty and they catch him there. That was a lot of fun. Trapping him in the overpass, the little catwalk there, using the tear gas, having him transform in there. That was a cool little technique they used to not have to show the transformation because that's expensive and 2008 tech wasn't really there yet. So that was awesome. I love the supersonic cannons that he had to overcome. That whole scene was a lot of fun for me. That's like, when I think of this movie, that's the scene I think about right away. Definitely not that abomination of a fight at the end.
Yeah, same. Rashawn, any moment stand out in your mind?
Yeah. One small thing real quick, I just thought of it and I forgot I had it. Just me being the gamer that I am. I'm actually probably one of the few people alive on the planet that played the movie version of this game. I remember playing it, and I'm sure if I look back at gameplay, probably today it looks terrible. But I remember playing that game, and you truly did feel like the Hulk playing that game and just seeing all these scenes recreated. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I just thought of that. But the only other scene for me really is I've always liked the final battle with Hulk and Abomination in this. I always thought that was cool. Just again, as a little comic book nerd growing up, seeing Abomination being on your screen, even though again the stuff that led up to it was kind of again a one-dimensional character. Again, seeing just that end fight was cool for me. And the one thing that when we talk about things that they could take away from the comic book movie to not make it feel so comic book-y and make it feel so ridiculous, the one thing that works in this movie, and I'm kind of upset that we don't get it anymore, I'll be in the minority, we get Hulk smash in this, and it works. It wasn't so cheesy. It's one of those things where you, even if someone says that like I just did, you probably forgot that even happened. Like I feel like it worked just in the context of that scene. You know, Abomination's about to destroy that helicopter with Ross and his daughter in there, and then I feel like that just worked, and that was definitely a cool little nerd moment in there, if you will. And I don't like that Mark Ruffalo doesn't Hulk smash anymore.
I liked it better.
It's a smaller scale.
I liked it better when Captain America said it for him. I thought that was a better use of that. That was cool too. That was cool too. That was almost like the nod of the purple shorts. It's like, okay, this is super campy, and we really can't use that, but like we're gonna dabble a little bit. Yeah.
It's a small scale version of Avengers Assemble, right? Like it's a classic callback line that they're using, or a term. And they don't use it again, but it's acknowledged.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad you mentioned the video game, because I totally forgot to mention Iron Man last week, and I wanted to mention.
And I played the Iron Man video game as well. Yes, you're getting into it, but I forgot to mention that last week as well.
I totally wanted to ask you about that because I did not play either of these. At some point throughout the series here, we'll realize, oh man, they stopped making video game tie-in movies, which is great.
Yeah, so they stopped, if I'm remembering, I got the little collection up here. They made Iron Man, they made Hulk. There wasn't an Iron Man 2, I don't think. They made a Thor, and there was, okay. Yep. So I stopped at Hulk then, because I didn't play Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, and they were done after that.
I think Avengers was the first one not to get the tie-in.
Yeah, because I think that they realized it was ridiculous.
And ironically enough, we're a few months away from an Avengers game, which is great. Hopefully,
we're getting it now.
Yeah. Del, any one moment that stands out in your mind at all?
I don't have any one main big moment that I even like cling to with this movie. I noticed a couple real quick things I want to mention, just little things I noticed. Nothing big or major, but one thing was the parallel of him jumping from the plane at the end of the movie. I thought it was funny how that lines up with him jumping out of the spaceship in Ragnarok. How in this movie he jumps out not knowing if he's going to change into the Hulk or not, and he turns into the Hulk. And in Ragnarok, he's like, "Oh yeah, you want to know who I really am? I'll show you." And he goes, and he just lands on the bridge. So
Good call, man.
I just noticed that for the first time today. I was like, "Oh, they really actually kind of it's inverse." I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I'm gonna say they meant to do it. I'd love to see. We're talking about Ross being a tie-in to future movies. I'd love to see Tim Blake Nelson come back as the leader because they kind of allude to that when the blood drips on, like Banner's blood drips onto his head.
Right, yeah.
You start to see his head like grow or more, but they never do anything with it. I really think that this movie they left a bunch of loose ends on purpose just in case because they didn't know where they were going to go with it.
That was one of the longest running like Easter eggs is that right there.
See,
for a long time.
I not even realized that was an Easter egg. Like I was like, oh yeah, he's the leader. I think it's even the same name as the character. What's his name now? I can't. Doesn't matter. Sherman, whatever it was. I don't know.
So that guy right there, Del. Real quick. I always I have a hard time not seeing him as the secondary character in Seinfeld who has bad breath that chases around Elaine all day at the office, and she gives him Tic Tacs. Really. So she can track him.
She can hear him. Yeah, that's right. I always remember him. He's Delmar, which is my full name. In Oh Brother Where Art Thou. So I've always got I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy with my name because nobody ever has my name. And then the last thing I just wanted, two last things real quick. Fun Easter egg. His name is David B. At the very end when he gets the necklace sent to him, which is a fun nod to the TV show. Because he was always David Banner in the TV show. For some reason, they never named him Bruce Banner. So I thought that was cool. And then the last thing I loved is when Tony Stark, and this came out 3 years before the Captain America First Avenger movie came out. I love how Tony Stark tells Ross the super soldier program was put on ice for a reason. I just thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
So,
great line.
Those are a lot of little nods in that movie because we talk about how it's not connected to the MCU, how it feels so disconnected in a lot of ways. There's a lot of little tiny tie-ins there that I think I just wanted to mention. So.
And also to your point about the on ice comment, when we think about development for the Tony Stark character, as we progress, especially when you get into Civil War, when you realize that comment also had some wasn't just like a fact that he was spitting out, also basically like a little bit of bitterness because we know how Tony felt about how his dad would prioritize a lot of that super soldier serum stuff and the Captain America stuff over his childhood at that time. So there was a little bit of bitterness there too with that comment that follows through the later movies, which is also really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as we mentioned, I every time I watch it, I forget there was a lot of threads that they honored throughout the series, even 10 years later, which is kind of nice. So even though it feels very disconnected and standalone-ish, we do get those threads that keep it a part of the MCU in some way, shape, or form. So this has been another really good episode of the MCU Reviewed. As always, we have a lot of fun talking about what we love talking about, passionate about games, movies, you name it. MCU is stuff we've been wanting to talk about for a good long time, especially John. This is kind of his baby here with MCU Reviewed. So we'll go around here just in our last few moments of the episode where people can find you on social media and a few quick plugs. John, we'll start with...
I was going to say the ranking.
Movie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This will be easy, I think.
We're going to do the ranking first.
No, set aside another half hour. We got to have some good discourse on where this ranks between Let's pull up the rankings. You guys can't see it, but the people at home can. It's a long list right now. Sitting at number 1 currently is Iron Man. When we watched that, that was last week. So that's number 1. Where do we want to put Incredible Hulk? Do you think it bumps Iron Man down from number 1?
It doesn't. It does not.
It doesn't. No. Okay. Good. Because I already had it written in as number 2 when I made the Iron Man graphic for number 1. So that's good. We got it.
How did you have the foresight to do that? That's crazy.
So our official ranking is number 1 Iron Man, number 2 The Incredible Hulk. We will see if that changes next week.
Next week, I think things get rolling.
Yeah.
I don't think it takes a like 5-6 weeks. I think next week there's going to be some debate.
Ooh, I'm excited for next week. So what is next week?
I've got my next week is Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Let me tell you.
I might watch that tonight, baby. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way. Once I get rolling here, like I just can't. It's like popcorn, you got to finish the bucket.
I know.
Yeah.
That's how it goes for me. Mm-hmm. Sweet. All right. Can we do the social media now, John?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes, John, not me, but yes.
Oh, yeah.
John, you go.
At Disruptoid on all social media. I'm just basically tweeting about the MCU nowadays because I'm back in. And like I've limited myself to just rewatching the current movie we're on. I don't want to get ahead at all. So now I can finally start watching Iron Man 2, and I'm happy about that. Come chat with me.
Good stuff. Rashawn, you're the Platinum King. You're everywhere these days. Where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me on a bunch of shows here on the Geekiverse, including Geeks Got Game, including the Disney Plus cast, whatever game reviews that we got going on, and of course, right here at home on the MCU Reviewed. You can also find me on Twitter at TrueKing0, where I talk pretty much same stuff as we're doing here. I just do it in text format. And then if you're a gamer, you want to see some different games, I do stream at True King Zero on Twitch in the moment of moving around some equipment and upgrading some equipment. So in the next coming days, I will have a consistent stream schedule if you're into gaming and want to see a up and coming variety streamer.
Check out our Final Fantasy VII Remake review, which will be viewable by the time you're seeing or listening to this. Good discussion there with Tim.
Yes.
Mr. Del Reid, where can people find you online? And why don't you give one last plug for Fanteestic and 26 Shirts?
Yeah, at Del Reid, not the most original Twitter name, but there it is.
That's the best.
And also, yeah, I actually did get that from somebody in England. I sent her a bunch of free T-shirts. Like, can I have your Twitter handle? Because you never tweet from it. So, anyways, and then 26 Shirts at 26 Shirts on all the different social media outlets and Fantastic Tees. That's the social media handle for our Fanteestic line. So, yeah, that's about it.
Awesome.
As we mentioned, Fanteestic is the presenting sponsor for the show. We've been friends with Del for a long time now. Just wonderful people doing a lot of good in the world, and we're proud to even know him. So thanks for all you do, you and your crew, Del.
Pleasure's all ours.
It's good. You guys are truly unbelievable. I'm on social media at Josiah D. Leroy. I am always talking about something Star Wars, Marvel, video games, you name it. All the stuff that we talk about here at the Geekiverse. Go to thegeekiverse.com for all the latest in the world of gaming, movies, comics, and more. You can check us out on a number of shows. We just doubled our lineup. This month is anniversary month for the Geekiverse. We turned 6 years old. We have, as I mentioned, doubled our show lineup. So at youtube.com/thegeekiverse, and you can listen to all of our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, any major streaming service. We are there. We appreciate you tuning in for this episode. We do have one last thing to mention here. We did a giveaway for last week's episode. We're going to be giving away, courtesy of Fanteestic, one shirt per episode. John, I think we're going to take it to Facebook this time.
Yeah. So after this episode posts, so we're recording this a couple days in advance, but this episode will post on Monday. There's a date for that specific Monday. It is the 11th. Monday the 11th, we're going to post this video, and the same day we post that video, we're also going to have a Facebook post over on the Geekiverse Facebook page. So make sure you like us on Facebook so you see that post. It will be very clear that this is the giveaway post. We'll have some instructions on how to enter. It'll be something like obviously liking the Geekiverse, checking out Fanteestic and 26 Shirts. It'll be pretty simple, but yeah, like Josiah Josiah said, every week, every episode, we're doing a giveaway. There's some time travel going on here, but we're still calculating who's going to win the Iron Man shirt. We got a couple days left on that, so super exciting. One more coming Monday the 11th. That whole week, got time to answer.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you again to Fanteestic for providing the sponsorship there. As we mentioned, next week is Iron Man 2 week for us. So you've got a few days on your hands here. Go ahead and watch Iron Man 2 so you can join us for our discussion on really what has become a Marvel Monday for us. So for Rashawn, for John, for Del, I'm Josiah. We appreciate you listening and watching. We'll see you next week.